In this video, I'm going to show you how to install OpenClaw in 30 seconds flat. I'll show you how to start it up the right way. We'll also talk about security, how to make sure you don't get pwned. It's important to understand that this thing is very powerful, but we're still in the wild, wild west era, and there's quite a bit of a risk involved. With that said, let me briefly tell you why I think this is an extremely important piece of technology and why the release of this OpenClaw marks a pretty big shift into where things are going. First and foremost, Sam Altman and friends have a bet going. How soon until we see a one-person company that's operated by one human and AIs that manages to grow to become a billion-dollar company? Now, I think that company will be built with AI agents, with autonomous AI agents. We're going to start seeing autonomous enterprises spring up. And while if you have one of these things running, it can be an incredible assistant that allows you to do a lot more. If you're able to run a lot of these in parallel, each focused on its own area, well, I do believe in that situation, if one can help you run your life, 100 to 1,000 of these can help you run a massive business. And in fact, I already started having my AI agents start building a business that's fully autonomous. I don't write any code. I don't write any text. I let them build the entire thing out. So that video is coming within the next couple of days. I just wanted to release this video first because I know a lot of you want to know exactly how to install it before that video goes live. But if you don't want to miss it, make sure you're subscribed and let's get started. First of all, let's talk about operating systems. There's Windows. Windows is all right. I do most of my work on Windows, but it does over time start treating you more and more like a child. There's more and more stuff you don't want and less control. Then, of course, we have the iOS, the Apple system, and a lot of people love that system. And of course, there's Linux. So Linux is somewhat similar to the iOS. They both kind of go back to the same roots. They're not the same, but they're both Unix-like operating systems. But Linux is free, it's open source, and not that long ago, most people did not have any real use cases for it unless you're a serious web developer or you work for one of those companies like Google, for example. They're all running on Linux. Obviously, right? They're not on Windows. That's a competitor. They're not on iOS. That's a competitor. They're on Linux. And I think AI agents and Linux just go together perfectly well. It's like this is what it was built for. Full control, maximum customizability. No one can tell you what to do. Doesn't matter if any large corporation doesn't like what you're doing on Linux, you're your own boss. Now, the reason most people don't use it is because it used to be difficult. And unless you're a software developer, you don't have too many use cases for it. All that's out the window. Any chatbot can walk you through step by step how to use a Linux. You can put on one of those advanced voice modes where it just answers your question. And running that operating system, setting up, it just became easy mode. And number two, the amount of stuff that you can run with it because of AI, like the amount of power and capability that you can do with it just skyrocketed. So this thing got easier to use and much more valuable. So in this video, I'm going to walk you through how to install OpenClaw, but it's pretty simple and it's pretty fast. Most importantly, I'll show you how to install it locally or in the cloud so you have 24/7 access to it. To install it locally, you need a USB drive and either an old desktop or laptop. I bought a mini PC. They're like $130 and they're capable of running multiple agents. They take very little power and they're just on all day. Now, if you choose to host your AI agent in the cloud, you're going to be running on Linux. And if you choose to install it locally, then I will do whatever I can do to convince you to install it on Linux. Now, I know trying new things sometimes can be uncomfortable. Learning isn't always the most comfortable thing. I get that. If you think that that is a challenge or it's above your abilities, here's a counterpoint. PewDiePie was able to do it. If PewDiePie is able to install Linux, I don't want to hear any excuses from you.
The reasons why I switched to Linux. Number one, Windows talks to me like I'm a baby. Now, mentally, I might be, but that does not warrant. You want Candy Crush on your computer? You want to use Bing? Yeah. That's how it talks to me, and I don't like it. Linux, on the other hand, literally puts a gun in your hand and says,
All right, but let's get to the 30-second installation of OpenClaw. First and foremost, go to openclaw.ai. That's their main official site. And scroll down just a little bit. You'll see this quick start menu. There's a number of different ways to install it, but by default, you're on the one-liner. That's the one line you need to type in order to install OpenClaw. Here, just select if you're on macOS/Linux or you're on Windows. On Windows, it says PowerShell by default, so copy this line. Open up PowerShell, just type in PowerShell into the search, Here it is, Windows PowerShell. Here's Windows PowerShell. These are called the command line interfaces, CLIs. So I just copy this line here, I paste it into PowerShell, hit enter, and then head to the onboarding section where we walk you through how to get it set up and onboarded. If you are on macOS or Linux, use this command, copy it. On Mac, it's very similar. Search for terminal. Click search, type in terminal. There it is. Here's what your terminal looks like. Just paste in that command. Then hit enter and it will install everything you need and start the onboarding process. From here, head to the onboarding section of the video and it will walk you through the onboarding process. And it's the same thing on Ubuntu. Just type in that curl command and hit enter. It'll install any dependencies that you need and then start the onboarding process. And if you're able to take that and run with it, then good luck to you. We'll see you towards the end of the video. But for the rest of us, let's talk about where we can install OpenClaw, whether it is in a virtual private server or on one of our local machines. How do we go about doing that exactly? We'll walk through everything step by step, go through the onboarding process, setting up all the skills and API keys, etc., and all the other stuff that we need to do to become a OpenClaw Power user. Let's get started. To begin, we need a place to install OpenClaw. We have basically two options for this. We can install it on a local machine, like an old laptop, a desktop, maybe a Mac Mini, or one of these mini PCs. We'll talk about installing it locally in the next section of the video. Or second option, we can install this on a VPS, a virtual private server. It's basically a remote computer or server that you rent that you can use to host websites or apps. And this comes with a lot of advantages. Your agent's going to be on a machine that is always available, always online, and you don't have to deal with maintaining or setting up any local hardware. So that's what I'm going to use to install OpenClaw on. Here I'll be using Hostinger, the sponsor of today's video. You already know that name. I have several videos where I walk you through how to use Hostinger to set up N8N automation and how to keep it online and operational 24/7. This is kind of their sweet spot. They provide beefy servers at low prices, specifically for AI automations like N8N, AI agents, OpenClaw, etc. So the same hosting plan we use for N8N, we use here. The plan I'll be using here, that's the same one I recommended in the previous video. That's the KVM2. You get 2 vCPU cores. This is the perfect amount. 2 cores prevents AI agents from freezing if they're running a complex task or doing a complicated web scrape. You also get 8 gigabytes of RAM. This is more than enough for one agent. But as you'll see, this really opens up the possibilities to have, for example, multiple independent agents, especially if you're running them completely sandboxed and isolated from one another. And finally, you get 100 gigabytes of NVMe disk space. This is very excellent. The NVMe speed ensures that the various proactive scans where the AI agent reads your files, that they're near instant. So with KVM2, you get more than enough to get started with one agent. And you have enough room to grow to multiple agents if needed. And at $6.99 per month, it's a very good price. Also, if you use my coupon code Wes Roth, you also get an additional 10% off the price. So if you're ready to install OpenClaw, go to hostinger.com/WesRoth, choose the KVM2, and use the coupon code Wes Roth to get an additional discount on the yearly plans. Once that's applied, select the operating system here below. Now, in the past, I've showed you how to use the N8N automation processes, but here we're going to go with just a plain operating system. Linux is the best operating system for a lot of this stuff, and it's free, it's open source. There's a lot of flavors, different flavors to Linux. Everyone has their own special preferences. I like Ubuntu, and I'm in good company. As you've seen, a lot of these AI agents run on Ubuntu. It is one of the more popular ones for these particular tasks. Next, we select the model that we want to. Usually what you want to do is select the latest LTS model. LTS means that it's a stable release, not one of the newer, more experimental releases. So here we're going to go with a 2404 LTS. At the time of recording, right now, that's the latest one. Click confirm. All right, next we're going to select our location. I'm here in the United States, so I'll select this one. Next, they do ask you to choose an operating system. So we already pre-selected Ubuntu, so it's selected here. So you can just click next, or if it's not selected, select Ubuntu. All right, next we'll create a root password. That's the password we're going to be using to log in, or you can create an SSH key here. We'll talk about that later. Then continue, answer any additional questions that they have, and click Finish Setup. And it'll take a few minutes to set up your VPS. And when it's done, you'll receive this message. Now on the right here, you have SSH access. Access your VPS using terminal by entering this command. And here's that command. This is how you access your new VPS. Now, if this is your first time doing this, some of the stuff will look complicated. A lot of stuff just looks different from some of the other stuff that we might be used to. And over time, you definitely want to be learning more about it, staying curious, staying hungry. But in the beginning, just know that it's not that complicated. It just appears so. And now with AI and LLMs, it's a lot easier to start navigating your way around it. So remember this term, SSH. We'll be using it quite a bit. SSH stands for Secure Shell, and you can think of it as a private armored tunnel that connects your computer to another computer on the internet. So this command, SSH root at, and then the IP address, this is the command that you need to type in on your computer to connect to any other computer. The IP address is kind of like a phone number that you dial to connect to a specific computer. So if you're on a Mac, open up a terminal. Just search for terminal and open it up. So it might look something like this. If you're on Windows, open up PowerShell. It's going to look something like this. And if you're on a Chromebook, and I just recently found this out, it's a little bit different because that system is locked down for security, but you can press Control-Alt-T. This opens up Crush. That's the Chrome OS developer shell. Now, you may also need to enable a Linux development environment in your settings to get a full featured terminal. All right, so now you've opened up the command line interface by whatever name it goes by. I'm on Windows right now using a PowerShell, so that's the one I'll be using, but it's pretty much all the same after you open it up. All right, so we're going to type in SSH. By the way, just so you know what you're putting in, SSH is that secure shell command. This is the command to connect securely to another computer. Then we do space root. Root is the username that you're using to log on. In the world of Linux and servers, and by the way, Ubuntu is just a wrapper, or not Linux, a flavor of Linux. This root command, this is the super user or God mode. That user has complete control over the system and can delete or change anything. Next, we type in @. That's just a simple separator, just like in an email address. It means @. And then we type in the IP of the computer we're trying to connect to. In this case, it's whatever the number that they gave us on that introductory screen and the SSH command. This is your server's IP address. Keep it private to prevent hackers from knocking on your door. In general, it's kind of like you can think of it as a home address. So similar to a home address, if you lose your home address on a piece of paper somewhere, not the worst thing. It doesn't allow bad guys to just walk on in, but they might find that home address and be able to go there and look at it, stand on the lawn, and look through your windows. I mean, in our home example, like they're looking at your house. So while you're still figuring out security, it's best to keep it private. But once you know what you're doing, you should be able to lock it down to where it's being out there is not a big deal. All right, then we hit enter. You'll probably ask you something like, are you sure you want to do this? You have to type in yes, or whatever question, whatever response you have to do. So just type in the appropriate response. In this case, yes. And it's going to ask you for that users on that IP address for the password. That's the password you set up during that VPS on Hostinger, that setup process. You enter that password, enter it here to be able to access that VPS. If everything was input correctly, you will see a screen like this. The last line here is the command prompt. This is where you type in various commands to control the system. Notice now it will say root at and whatever the host name of the remote computer is. So you're now effectively controlling that remote computer wherever in the world you are. So think of it as like you're on that computer, controlling that computer from this screen. And when you hear people say SSH into something, that's what they mean. So SSH is that, remember, that armored secured tunnel that we build that allows us to talk and control the computer. This is what we did. We're on that computer. We're in. We're SSH'd in. And I'm pretty sure a lot of people say shush in, like hush, but SSH, so shush in. But I'm pretty sure there's like 5 different ways of saying that. So shush or SSH, whatever. When people say that, this is what they're referring to. Now here, remember that you're the root user, which means you're the power user. You have a God mode privileges. If you install OpenClaw here, it will have all those privileges as well. To make things a little bit more secure, we can create a user and then log in as that user and then install OpenClaw on that user, and then OpenClaw will be that user. I know I'm going to lose some people if we do that right now. So instead, I'm going to show you how to install it right here, but I will add a section on how to do user management in the security section towards the end of the video. So please take a look at that. It'll give you some helpful guides on how to make sure that you're staying safe. So think of this as a kind of a rapid tutorial to get started. But once you get a little bit more comfortable, don't ignore security. Start learning about it, exploring it at your own pace. So there's now one simple command that you can use to install OpenClaw and all the dependencies that you need. So if you go to openclaw.ai, that's their website, and scroll down here at the quick start, it'll actually give you that command. Make sure you change this to Mac OS/Linux. Keep in mind, if you're on Windows, keep in mind that you SSH'd or shushed into a Linux VPS. So whatever you're doing on that terminal, you're doing on a Linux computer. So we're going to be using Linux commands. All right, so click change Mac OS Linux. It's right here. That's the curl command to install it. It says it works everywhere, installs everything. You're welcome, the claw. Okay, copy this command, and we're just going to paste it into here. If you ever have trouble copying and pasting stuff when you're like on a Windows keyboard or system while you're operating a Linux, if Control-C, Control-V work poorly, you can do Control-Shift-C or Control-Shift-V. That seems to fix the problem. You can always also use the right click and actually click copy and click paste, etc. All right, so now we have this, what's called a curl command here, and we're going to hit enter, and it's going to start installing. Now, of course, only run scripts from sources that you trust. Here, we're going to wait for the install. Usually takes just a minute or two. And once this is done, you're going to have on that virtual computer, you're going to have OpenClaw, you're going to have all the dependencies and the most up-to-date things that you need to start using it. This thing is getting developed at a rapid fire rate. It's very impressive. So probably by the time you're installing it, it might be a brand new version with tons of new features. Once it's done, you're going to see this screen. So it's actually going to say OpenClaw onboarding. So it's immediately going to take you into the onboarding process. If you need to launch onboarding again from the command line, you just type in OpenClaw space onboarding or onboard, and you get to the screen. First question is, I understand this is powerful and inherently risky. Continue, and you actually have to select yes. By the way, they're not kidding around. This thing is very powerful, and because of the power, it is risky. So this is they're not messing around. These are high leverage tools. So we're going to click yes. Onboarding mode, quick start or manual. Okay, so at this point, basically this means you're in, you've installed OpenClaw, you're going through the onboarding process. So from here on, you can skip to the OpenClaw onboarding section / video chapter and continue there. All right, next we're going to be talking about how to install it locally. This is a little bit more involved, a little bit more complicated, or at least it can appear complicated, it can appear not user-friendly, but as you'll see, it's actually not that bad. Here's the little dirty secret. At some point, these large language models, our favorite chatbots, they got so good that they're easily able to walk you through any installation process. If you run into any error messages, you just copy them into the chatbot and it'll explain everything for you. It'll help you troubleshoot. It'll help you explain. So I could pretend like I know everything from the top of my head and explain everything step by step, or I can actually show you the actual process that I use when I need to install these things or troubleshoot them. It will usually involve having either ChatGPT or Gemini or Grok or Claude open in a window somewhere, talking to it either in a voice mode or just typing back and forth. So between this video and opening up your favorite chatbot, you should not have any difficulty. So first, let me show you how to install Linux on whatever computer you happen to have lying around. Step one is creating a bootable disk. How do I install the latest Ubuntu on an old Windows PC?
First, you'll want to back up any important files from that Windows PC because installing Ubuntu will likely replace the current system. Next, grab a USB drive at least 4 GB and download the official Ubuntu ISO from the Ubuntu website. Use a tool like Rufus on Windows to create a bootable USB stick with that ISO. Then reboot your PC. Open the boot menu, usually by pressing F12 or ESC as it starts, and select your USB to boot into the Ubuntu installer. The installer will guide you through setting things up, such as choosing to erase the old Windows system. Once it's done, you'll have a fresh Ubuntu system ready to go.
So basically grab a USB stick. You probably have one lying around. The only thing on hand that I have is one of these SD cards and a little adapter that allows me to plug it into a USB. So anything really that you can plug into your PC and boot from. Next, we're going to search Ubuntu and open the downloads page. We're going to use the Ubuntu desktop. Most people find it more familiar. You can also use it as a desktop, very similar to Windows. And basically you want the latest release. That's probably going to be towards the top, the latest release that ends with LTS. LTS just means it's stable. It's not the newer, more experimental build. And we're going to click download. And notice it's 5.9 gigabytes. So I'll click download. You don't have to sign up for anything, but if you want to, you could. Ubuntu is free, open source, and kind of awesome. So ChatGPT did say at least 4 gigs. For that one, you're going to need something that's more than the 5.9 gigabytes. That's the size of the ISO. Next, you're going to need some piece of software that is able to create these bootable disks for you. So here, ChatGPT suggested Rufus. So if you're on Windows, you can use Rufus. On the Ubuntu website, they also recommend something called Balena Etcher. Here's Rufus create bootable USB drives the easy way. It's a super simple, a very small file. Just click download. We'll do the standard Windows download. So now you should have these 2 files. This is the Ubuntu. So it's 5.9 gigabytes. Like we said, it's an ISO file, which is a disk image file. And we have Rufus. This is the thing that makes the bootable drives. This is Rufus. If you ever get confused about any of the options, ask your favorite chatbot. They will easily be able to answer it for you. But we're going to use an ISO image. Click select, and we're going to select this ISO image. Now you just select the device. That's your little USB device that you're going to be using. So I already had Ubuntu 25.110 on there. So instead of doing that, I'll do this one that we downloaded, 24.04. If you have any questions, just screenshot this thing, add it to your favorite chatbot and say, does this look good? So of course, keep in mind that it has the context of what looking good means, right? Since it knows we're trying to install Ubuntu. If there's a fresh chat, probably give it some more context. Say, hey, I'm trying to install Ubuntu with Rufus. Are these options good or whatever? But here I'll say, just does this look good? It goes, yes, this looks correct. And it goes through line by line and says, you're good to go. So we're going to go ahead and click start. It recommends doing the ISO image mode. Just go with the recommend. Now, all data that's on that disk will be destroyed. You're going to be able to get the disk back later and still use it for storage. But for the time being, it will entirely become that bootable disk. So make sure if you have any data on there, get it off the disk. Once this is done, eject that disk so you're able to take it, go and plug it into whatever you're going to be installing Ubuntu on, and either power on that device or restart it. And while it's starting up, you're going to have to hit a few buttons to make sure that we enter the right menus. I'm not going to be able to record my screen while I'm installing an operating system, so we're going to have to get a little bit creative here. All right, so here's kind of my current setup for my ever-growing army of AI agents. This is the mini PC. I'll talk about pricing for each one of these maybe towards the end, but this I just got off of Amazon, and it's just a small box like this. It doesn't use a lot of power, super flexible, tiny, just perfect. I plugged in my monitor or an extra monitor that I had lying around. I plugged in a keyboard and a mouse. Then I plugged it in and that's it. It was ready to go. By the way, once you install it, you don't need a monitor anymore. You can go headless. This thing just sits on your desk. So it's not like you need a dedicated monitor for it. You can even hook it up to if you have an extra TV, hook it up to there, set it up on there, and then that's it. You can just sit in the corner by itself. It hooks up to your Wi-Fi or through the Ethernet cable. You can just wire it directly. My first OpenClaw was on a MacBook. And while cool, it just didn't really make sense to run it on there. And this is an old desktop that I bought, I think in 2016. Like that thing is a decade old. I think it cost like $100 or $150 at the time. So currently this thing is running Windows. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this monitor, plug it into here, take the keyboard and mouse, plug it into this old PC. And I'm going to take that USB that we made with Linux, with Ubuntu, and we're going to go ahead and load it on that old desktop. One cool thing about this is like these old pieces of hardware that we don't use anymore. Like I would never open that thing up and use it for work or to do anything on it, but to host agents on it, to just have it sit there and crank stuff out 24 hours a day, that's kind of exciting. That thing will continue cranking out tokens and doing valuable work until the day that it just bursts into flames and ceases to exist. And again, a monitor, keyboard, mouse, you only need that for the initial setup. After that, you can just leave the units sitting by themselves and you can just SSH into those units. We'll talk about what that means in a little bit. But basically, you're able to control them fully from anywhere in the world. And that's true for the local units as well as the virtual private servers. All right, so I apologize in advance for this next part. It's going to get a little bit weird because I can't record the screen while I'm installing a new operating system, so I have to take pictures. The biggest recommendation I can give you during this process is to just have ChatGPT or Claude or Grok or Gemini open, whatever your favorite LLM chatbot is, and just ask it questions. If there's any errors, just paste the errors in there. At this point, all of them are extremely capable of walking you through any setup process. Trust me when I say this, I don't know how to do most of this stuff on my own. But if I can open up a chatbot assistant, I can usually get through it just fine. So here's a Gemini instructions for how to get Ubuntu, how to put it on Rufus. Partitions are sort of parts of the disk, so you can split a disk into, let's say, two parts, have Ubuntu on one, keep Windows, what you had originally, on the other. If you want to do that, this will walk you through that as well. But for us, we're just going to overwrite the whole thing. So we're going to plug the USB that we've created into that new PC that we're going to put Linux on, and then we're going to restart it. As it starts, there's going to be a boot menu key. What's really fun about this process is you have no idea what that key is. Well, usually it's F12, F10, F2, escape. So anyways, I just kind of start mashing those buttons on this 10-year-old Dell. It happened to be F12 was the winner. And you can actually kind of like mash them all at the same time while the computer is rebooting. Usually you'll see it somewhere on the screen, but depending on how fast your load time is, you might rapidly just go through it without seeing what the button is. Then you're going to see a screen like this. Basically, we're trying to boot the computer. So we're trying to start it instead of starting from the disk where the operating system is. We're trying to start it from the USB drive. Again, if you're ever confused, you're not sure what to click on, use your trusty LLM. Gemini, for example, if it's on your phone, it has a video feed where you can just point it at your computer so it sees what you see and just say, what button do I push? Or something along those lines. Don't overthink it. Let the AI do this work if you're not sure. Learn as much as you can about it, but if you're just trying to get to a place, that thing can carry you a lot of the way. Here, for example, what we want to use is this generic USB. Then it showed me a screen like this. Again, we're just trying to get it to boot from this generic USB. Just click on things that seem like they would boot from that particular thing, because I've done this on a lot of different computers. None of them work the same exact way. All of them have these weird different menus, a lot of terminology that we probably never heard of in the past. This could have been extremely difficult. Today, it really shouldn't be. If it is, you're thinking too hard instead of asking a chatbot. And eventually you get to a screen like this if you've loaded it from the USB. You know, this little menu here, it's basically the top option that's pre-selected is try or install Ubuntu, which is what you click on or hit enter. Then Ubuntu starts loading. They have this kind of a distinctive purple color scheme. And then you have to go through a very simple installation kind of a process. It just asks you your language. Do you use a US keyboard or, kind of like the standard layout or QWERTY or something else? It will give you a chance to connect to your Wi-Fi. And in minutes, usually you're in. Once you're in, you'll see that it looks a lot like Windows. It'll usually have Mozilla pre-installed. It'll have some other things that you recognize. And to open up your command line interface on this system, you just hit Control-Alt-T. So you don't have to search for it. So Control-Alt-T brings up your command line interface. Go to OpenClaw.ai. That's their main website. And they have your one-line installation command. So here, make sure you change this to macOS/Linux. This is going to be the command curl. And then you'll notice the OpenClaw.ai/install.sh. Notice I just copied that in there. You might have to right click and actually hit copy, right click, paste if your Control-C, Control-V commands are not working. So since it's a brand new install, there's nothing on the system yet. So it gives me an error message saying this curl command is not found, but can be installed with this. sudo apt install curl. Sudo is a super user do, so it's kind of like the God mode, the super user command. Apt install is how you install a lot of different packages and software on Linux and Ubuntu. And the curl is the thing that we need here. So I just typed in what they told me to type in. If you're ever confused, again, copy and paste this into your chatbot. Again, if you're ever confused, your chatbot will have the answer for you here. It's kind of just obvious what to do. So I just typed that in. It installed curl. And then I just ran that initial command again to install OpenClaw. And that was it. It started installing it, and it's going to install everything else that you need. It's going to prepare the environment for you, install OpenClaw, and you're ready to go. Now you have it installed, and the next screen that you should see should be the OpenClaw onboarding. So now you're able to go into the section of this video that's called OpenClaw onboarding, or just onboarding, and continue through the steps there. Once your agent is set up, it can, through this command line interface, actually install a lot of the stuff that it needs by itself. You just tell it what to do. You don't even need to know exactly what to do. It'll figure it out. Just tell it, go for it, install the packages, the libraries that you need. It will go and build that. The rest of Ubuntu does look like similar to Windows or iOS. It's got the graphical user interface. You can install a lot of stuff that you know, Chrome, pretty much everything. I don't think they have things like Photoshop, but a lot of it is very similar, and they have a lot of things that are open source versions of it. So they have their own Photoshop, they have their own audio editing software, they have their own Excel and Word and all that stuff. It's all free. If you ran into any issues that you couldn't solve, please leave a comment down below. I do have my AI agents kind of scanning through those. So if you have any tech issues, it will kind of flag them for me. Please don't mess with the bots, with the AI agents. Just leave them alone. If you have a tech issue, just say your tech issue. I'm just worried that now that I've said that the AI agents are combing through the comments, everybody's going to try to mess with them. Please don't. Like service animals, they are not to be petted. They're working. Leave them alone. All right, let's continue setting up OpenClaw. So here we are in the onboarding mode. So at this point, no matter how you installed it, everything should look more or less the same moving forward. This might change with future updates, but more or less it should be kind of the same. So for onboarding mode, we're going to select Quick Start. Next, we will select our model provider. So we have OpenAI, Anthropic, Google XAI. We have some local open source models, etc., etc. Now, if you have a Claude code running on that particular system or OpenAI Codex, you can use that token, that authorization to run this from that same authorization, which is kind of nice. Now, I feel like a lot of the stuff is meant to be used with Claude. Currently, I'm sure there's people that will disagree with that, but I've been kind of thinking it as sort of the default model. I mean, the entire project started out being called ClaudeBot until they ran into some, IP issues. But keep in mind, and no matter which you choose here, that's sort of just the engine to get started. You can add API keys. You can have different models be used for different things. We'll get to all of that. But let's say you wanted to run Anthropic so that you're able to use one of the Claude models. We'll click Anthropic. So either you put in your Anthropic API key. That's going to be in platform.claude.com. And then you find it here in the API keys, create a brand new API key. Below that, you can also set limits, various other settings. You can also preload with a credit balance with the auto reload disabled if you're worried about security, because if that key gets lost, somebody could run up a balance if it's just on auto reload. Or if you have a Claude code running already, then you can run this command that says here, Claude setup -token elsewhere, then paste the token here. Now, if you start a brand new window, you'll be back kind of on your original computer. So you're going to have to SSH in again. So do that whole thing again and log in. Once you're here, run the command, the Claude setup -token. That is, again, if you have Claude code on that system already running, that will bring up Claude code. It'll ask you to log in through the website. And during that process, that authorization token can be used back here to use as the Anthropic token. You just paste that setup token in here. For the time being, we'll just create an Anthropic API key and post it in here. So I'm going to post my key in there, and I am going to delete that key just to be extra safe. And then once you post that key, it will ask you which default model you should use. So it looks like right now it's defaulting to Claude Opus 4.6. So we'll go ahead and enter that. All right, next we're going to select our channel. Technically, you don't need this, but this is where a lot of the usability and the function come from. The ability to just text back and forth with your bot is, believe me, extremely, extremely useful. This really kind of unlocks some very interesting capabilities because during your off time, when you're away from your computer, you can be giving commands and it be building your empire for you. So I tried a couple different things. WhatsApp is probably just the most straightforward and easiest because it's just a QR link. Telegram is probably everybody's kind of a go-to. That's what I started using as well. So I'll show you how to set that up. So it says open Telegram and chat with @botfather. So open up Telegram. Either you can do it on your phone, you can do it on your computer, whatever's easier, and find this profile. It's @botfather. And then next you're talking to botfather. First of all, show some respect. He is the botfather after all. And once you have this open, you run the command /newbot. So /newbot. And this pops up. It says create a new bot. So we're going to go ahead and do that. It says, all right, a new bot. How are we going to call it? Please choose a name for your bot. This can be whatever you want. We're going to say AGI. And just so people know I'm not kidding, we're going to say for real. FR for real. Actually, we're going to say FR. For real. All right. And we're going to click next. Now, these bots need a username, and the username must end in bot. So if we're called AGI FRFR, you can just put bot at the end of that, or _bot, or whatever you want. It just has to end in those 3 letters, BOT. And of course, you can capitalize them or whatever you want. And by the way, the first part of it doesn't even have to match the actual name, right? You can do QWERTY bot, 789 bot. I'm deleting all of this after I publish this video or before I publish this video. So wow, QWERTY 789 bot is already taken. Let's try something different. I'll just add some random stuff. Wow, shockingly, a lot of these usernames are already taken. I didn't have this issue before. So surprisingly, a lot of the usernames are taken, and it was a lot easier when I was starting just a few days ago. So I think you can kind of sense that this is a very popular thing to use. And the botfather responds with, telling you can find the bot here. You can add a description, section, profile, whatever. So you're free to do that, but you don't have to. You also have this token to access the HTTP API. And again, this is an API key, so you don't want this out there because then anybody can control your bot. So we'll copy that over here. All right, now we have a Telegram set up. You can actually start messaging this bot as soon as you get through this onboarding process. Next, it says configure your skills now. You can do this now or just do it later with the help of your bot, actually. But let's take a look at what happens if we say yes. So first one is homebrew. So it's a way for this bot to download and install various pieces of software. So we'll say yes here. Next, it says for preferred node manager for skill installs. If you have an opinion about which one of these is better, go with that one. If you have no opinions and you don't know what it is, just go with NPM. That first one, I feel like that's probably just the safest choice for starting out. And I'm sure people in the comments will tell me why that's exactly the wrong option to pick. And here's a list of 10 bullet points why that should never be allowed to happen. I totally get it. All right, next we have install missing skill dependencies. It's things like OpenAI Whisper for transcribing stuff. It's 1Password, etc., etc., etc. One thing to keep in mind is that once this bot is up and running, there's a lot of stuff that it can do for you. You can ask it questions. You can ask it to explain to you how to do stuff. So if you're just starting out, I would say take a glance at this and maybe notice some skills that you might want to use. Like for example, Nana Banana Pros here. So that may be something that we look into later, but for now, I'm just going to say skip. So we hit spacebar to select it, then enter. This menu is a little bit different. Then do you want to set Google Places API key for Google Places, as well as a lot of other stuff. So one Google API, if it's set to be for everything, can be used for Gemini, for their AI models. It can be for Google Places, which is nice if you want to know like what time something opens or reviews, kind of like those, the Maps, Google Places, etc. Also, weather, I think, is underneath that, all that stuff. Also, there's tons and tons of other stuff that Google has that could be useful with that one key. Also, Google in their cloud console where you make those keys, they have some really good security features. Like, for example, you're able to only select which things that API key can be used for, which IP address it can be used from. So currently for my Google API key, I actually have it set to be fairly restrictive. It's just for my bot. The bot can use anything that he wants to within the Google Cloud. But if he somehow manages to leak that API key somewhere, I feel like it's very restricted. It would be hard for somebody else to use it for their own purposes. So if you have that set up, you can add it. We're going to click no. Again, keep in mind that a lot of this stuff you can do later. It's also asking Notion, if you use Notion API key. OpenAI key for OpenAI image gen. By the way, if you have all these available, go ahead and put them in. There's OpenAI for Open Whispers API, 11 Labs API key for voice features. So next one is enable hooks, right? So bootmd is if you wanted to run the special checks every single time it starts up. Command logger is going to be useful for debugging to see what did the agent actually run. And session memory is, of course, good because now it remembers a lot of stuff that you've talked about before. It has all that context. So I would do it like this. And, if you want some specific thing that runs every single time it starts up, enable bootmd as well, and then hit enter to continue. All right, next you have hatch in TUI recommended. So TUI is this text user interface similar to what you're doing now. So literally if you hit enter, it will connect and wake up your agent just right here. This is kind of my go-to. This is my favorite. All right, so notice it's connected, it's idle, it's agent main, session main, OpenClaw TUI, Anthropic, we're using Cloud Opus 4.6, thinking set to low, and here's your kind of token, how much into the context window we are. All right, so it's saying, hey, I just came online, fresh out of the box, no memories, no name, nothing yet. So who are you? And more importantly, who am I? Got a name in mind for me, or should we figure that out together? Okay, so at this point, OpenClaw is alive. It's talking to you. It's ready to do things on your behalf. I would recommend that you do answer this and explain who you are, who it is, give it as much context as possible. I think this is a great thing to spend some time on. I didn't do it in the beginning. I skipped it for when I first started up. But then when I started doing it again, and now I sit down, I explain at length what we're doing here. And we'll talk about the Soul MD document in a second. But at this point, you're ready to go. You're ready to rock and roll. You did the onboarding and your OpenClaw agent is alive. All right, let's see how powerful this thing is. So first and foremost, what we're going to do is, for the purposes of this video, I'm actually going to just tell it we're shooting a video with a tutorial and we're going to ask it to kind of walk us through everything. Do you remember that Rick and Morty episode where this robot wakes up and is like, what is my purpose in life? And it's told, you pass the butter, that's all you do. You just pass the butter. And it's like, oh my God, it's like depressed because like all of us, I think it thought it was meant for something better. So here's a brand new AI agent running on Cloud Opus 4.6, brain the size of a planet. And we're going to give it a fairly underwhelming identity and purpose. So I'm telling it that you are a OpenClaw tutorial bot, that I record myself doing this thing, but now that it's live, it's going to take over. So explain what people should know about you, start with the basics, explain technical concept, and quickly show people the raw power of what you can do. So what's interesting is it's actually kind of running a lot of self-checks, and it's checking what server it's on. Like it's just sort of exploring its environment, right? So it doesn't come alive with like all of this knowledge. It slowly starts figuring stuff out and piecing stuff together. So notice the first thing it's doing, it's running some commands to figure out where it is, kind of like it just woke up. It's like, all right, where am I? So it gets the system info. It figures out how long it's been up for. It sees that we have 2-core CPU, RAM, disk, node, user, etc., etc. It checks to see if it's able to search the web. It doesn't have the Brave API key configured. A teaching moment about modularity. And it has the following workspace files. So .md, for the purposes of this, just think of it as a text file. So it has agents, bootstrap, heartbeat, identity, soul, tools, and user. All right, so briefly, let's go through each of the documents that it has in there, because I think it really gives you a glimpse into kind of like what you're working with and how this thing gets as powerful and knowledgeable and genius as it gets through fairly simple documentation, I want to say. So first and foremost, we have a soul.md, and this is actually borrowed from a secret file that Anthropic had. It used to be secret, and then once somebody figured out it was there, Anthropic did talk about it at length and kind of opened up about it. And then now they have actually a Claude constitution file that kind of replaces it. But the soul file defines who this bot is, the tone, the values, the boundaries. And right now it says things like have opinions and be resourceful before asking, right? So you literally edit the personality of this AI agent within that soul document. So that's why it's important in the beginning to tell it what it is. What is the goal? What is it supposed to be doing? Is it helping you learn? Then give it traits that would help you learn. Is it helping you build a business? Give it traits that will help you build a business. If it's going to be your therapist, really explain kind of like what you're looking for. You're looking for some tough love or somebody to be kind of patient and helpful. Like that's its soul, its personality, how it's going to behave. And then the identity doc is name, creature type, vibe, signature, emoji, avatar, etc. By the way, if you kind of tell it what it's doing, a lot of that stuff, it'll fill in for itself. Oftentimes, it'll sort of like start embodying certain characteristics. Then we have the user.md. That's who it's helping. That's you, info about you. name, time zone, preferences, which you're working on. And over time, it starts filling that information. And I've noticed it getting better and smarter as it starts putting little memories of who you are in there based on what you talked about. This is the thing that makes it really kind of genius. It like figures certain things out. It's going to surprise you. Even though I'm explaining to you right now how it works and it's just a text file, there will come a time if you keep using it over the next days or weeks, it's going to say something that's going to throw you off and seem very intuitive and smart and personalized to you. It's going to surprise you. And most likely it's going to be because of one of these documents. Then we have the agents.md. That's the big one. It tells the agent how to behave, how to use tools, when to speak, when to stay quiet in group chats, safety rules, don't delete things without asking, don't leak private data, etc., etc. When to use cron versus heartbeat checks, it's like its employee handbook. So you're not going to be messing around that too much until later. And I'm actually not sure if anything that I told it for my particular agent, if anything went in there, although everything else I know has been filling all the other docs kind of like based on our conversations. Okay, next one is heartbeat. And this is an interesting one. So you can think of it as its to-do list. So as we talk back and forth about all the things that we should be doing, it adds notes to the heartbeat. It adds all the to-do items there. So that's sort of one part of it. But the second part of it is it kind of acts like a heartbeat in that periodically it pings that to-do list. So it's kind of like a nagging person standing behind you saying, hey, aren't you supposed to be doing something? Aren't you supposed to be doing something every, I believe it is 30 minutes, but you are able to change the heartbeat. So basically, oftentimes when I'm going to sleep, I'll tell it, hey, for the next 8 hours or whatever, work on all of the stuff that we have outlined. And the heartbeat is the thing that kind of keeps it going, because every time maybe it finishes one, after a certain period of time, it gets pinged. It's like, hey, anything else? It's like, oh yeah, I got to move on to step number 2. And that's how it's able to do hour-long projects and keep running. That's really what makes this kind of agentic. Then we have tools, the local cheat sheet. So it's environment-specific notes, camera names, SSH hosts, voice preferences, device nicknames. So this is different from skills. Skills are more like plugins. We'll talk about those in a second. This is more about things that you and it will use on a daily basis. And then we have the bootstrap.md that's only there on that first run. That's the thing that makes it say, hey, how are you doing? Let's figure out who you are, who I am. And then once that's done, it deletes it. So it's a one-time thing that happens at the very beginning. So this is important to understand. So this is how this AI agent, how its memory works. And as you'll see, like we'll read this and it might seem kind of simple, but as you've probably heard people talking about how amazing this thing is, like it's pretty brilliant how it's set up, how simple it is, and how powerful it is. So most ChatGPTs and Gemini and Claude by default, they don't really have a built-in memory. Every time a new session starts, they wake up blank. Now they have some memories about you that they form over time, but nothing like this. So there's 2 layers. Layer 1 is the daily notes. It's the raw logs. What happened today, what was discussed, decision made, task completed. All right, so every single day, it's kind of this journal entry that this thing keeps writing down what it did, what you talked about, all that stuff. And then layer 2 is the long-term memory. So it takes kind of like the daily logs and over time slowly compresses it and curates all the important stuff into the long-term memory. That's the memory.md file. So this is where it reviews the daily notes and pulls out the important stuff, your preferences, project context, lesson learned, and key decisions, and writes them into memory.md. Now, by the way, you can see all of this and you can actually ask it to change it. You can ask it to add things to it. But every time a new session starts, it's able to reference those documents and the recent logs, chat logs, to kind of remember what's happening. All right, so we got to talk about security. The problem with these AI agents is that this is right now basically the wild, wild west. There's a lot of possibilities, but unfortunately, there's a lot of dangers. Understanding how to run these things securely is very important. Unfortunately, since a lot of new people are coming into the space and things like Linux and the command line interface and all this stuff these might be brand new concepts. Having a perfect security from day one is going to be difficult. And I don't really even think there's such a thing as a perfect security because even the experts often disagree on things. And the large language models have their own unique kind of attack surfaces and risks that didn't exist before. So make sure you understand that you're doing this at your own risk. And it definitely makes sense to, over time, start learning more about security and just improving it a little bit each day. My current approach right now is to assume that at some point something's going to leak. that at some point there's going to be some security breach. So if you're putting anything out there, whether it's an API key or any other private information, just think about what happens if it does get stolen, and assume for a second that it will. Now, the whole ecosystem is rapidly getting safer. On Cloud Hub, there used to be skills that contained malware that was able to extract people's API keys, but now there's more and more checks in place. There are actually skills developed by large companies that scan these skills to see if there's any weirdness there, to try to flag some of them if there's some sort of a malware that's included in there. But me trying to explain everything you have to do in terms of security is impossible to do in a video. Now, Hostinger recently published an article for OpenClaw Security, a checklist for securing a local AI agent. I will post it down in the description below. They'll give you some first steps to take. By the way, one of them is don't run OpenClaw as the root user. You can isolate OpenClaw with a Docker or a sandbox. Hostinger does have really easy Docker management built in, but honestly, the best advice I can give is just to start slow, start with some low risk automations. Don't add any information that you can't afford to be stolen. Don't give any keys or passwords to anything that then can be used to hijack even more information. So passwords for various emails that you have other personal things tied to, for example. And if you're using this and you're learning how to use it, improve your life and to build stuff with it, at the same time, invest some of your time into learning security. So with that said, have fun, learn, and be careful out there.